How about killing that music? Y'all mind? Man. You're like, I know, I swear.
Power the microphone.
I guess speaking first, or reading first, I should say thank you so much to the Art Council, and thank you so much to the Porch for putting this on. And special thanks to Eric McCready. And the fact that this is going on means there is a desire to hear poetry in Lake Charles. So that's just a really cool thing. So thank you to the community. All right. Well, like I said, Jay Bruce Fuller and myself, we're going to be reading about 20 minutes each. So I hope you enjoy. I'm going to start out. Jay, once you hear Jay's poems, he writes a lot about animals. So I thought I'd start out with animals a little bit. Alright, this one's called The Fall. Mom complained of possums eating up her tomatoes. One night, after the neighbor's dog started, I snuck out my window with Dad's old rifle. 2 yellow eyes ran up the fence line, but one crack of the rifle took it down. Mom pulled a trash can around the side. She held the flashlight on the blind, hairless children edging their way from the dead possum's pouch. They squirmed and gyrated on the shovel's cold blade, but made no noise during those last moments of their weightlessness. He pinned down a lot. This one's called a Bird Hunt at Dawn. I am a horrible shot with a shotgun, and this poem commemorates that. As the sun begins to rise over the broken tree line, the fields yellow like nicotine-stained fingers. Fog slowly falls, and I cannot see Father. Only hear they coming low. Hold your gun steady. Last week I would have made Buffalo Bill proud, cracking clay pigeons with a snap. But as the first shots ring out, I am still blinded by the mist. 3 o'clock a voice shouts, I spin. 12 o'clock another yells. Raising my gun to my shoulder, I fire blindly into the devil-red sun. Voices gallop around me and the smell of sulfur charges into my face. When I can finally see, next to me, Father brushes feathers from his shirt. 9 o'clock, blood on his hands, he lifts his gun. Does anybody know what noodling is?
Yeah.
Or hand grabbing?
Yeah.
Alright. Or catfish. Alright, well I was asked to do this once, and I got to the edge of the water and then I refused. So this was scared the mess out of me. This poem's called Noodling. From the bank, I watched the wild men dip under the water's smooth surface. But in seconds, ripples changed to brown wake, and catfish attached to men's arms thrash. All day is blood and beer. In between battles, my uncles talk. Turtles feel like a rock. Catfish are smooth, and if you feel fur, get the hell out of there. Train track scars from fins and teeth line their arms. They beg me to try my hand at teasing tails, but I'm afraid to enter into the submerged barrels. As the day ends with campfires lit, their heroics grow, cursing the good moon. I want to run from their drunken voices, but a prowling snapper hiding at the river's edge waits to strike. I'm sure of this. We're going to move on from the animal poems to, we'll call maybe son of a bitch poems. This one's called My Grandpa Reminds Me of Charles Bukowski. There is a photo of Bukowski reading a book while sitting on the toilet. A film crew pokes at him with their lens. Bukowski's white short sleeve button down cinches tight and pulls at his belly. He leans over to the right as if he just took a look at what he left, like it's something sacred. Grandpa leaves the door wide open to the bathroom. He sits counting tiles with his toes. Grandpa even pees sitting down. He once said, "I'm sick of your nana bitching about piss on the toilet seat." From the doorway, I watch him tuck his white shirt, then run his back pocket comb through the faucet through his hair, slick gray peppered with white black grains. Then, like a bear at first sunlight, he emerges out of the bathroom. His inching pace down the hallway ends with a crash on the colored couch. He lets out a low roar. "Betty Jane, I'm in the living room now. Betty Jane, you hear me?" Like drunk Bukowski signaling to one of his groupies. Grandpa calls for his wife's camera lens of an eye to document that he is not alone, but still here, suffering with the living like everyone else. I always the wild thing about a reading is you can't hear those pin drops. It's deafening sometimes. All right, this one's called Borrowing Night for Day, Part 1. There won't be no Part 2 tonight, but this is Part 1. I guess the next few poems are, I guess, more coming-of-age experience, a lot of testing from Mississippi. So the landscape, but more than that, just testing boundaries of adolescence. In high school, we dropped acid. Brightly colored bits of paper floated down to our tongues, like the falling leaves in autumn. We drove the levees, long serpents of dirt, and twisted our underage breaths to cheap beer, while our lungs screamed to nirvana, and against the low-lying lands of farms and forests with faults deeper than our silt-rich soil. Once, we took shots of whiskey from a bottle of a black man outside a country corner juke. He laughed as I puked and drove away, leaping over railroad crossings. 4 tires flew through the night, flew through the untilled fields as mud and clay caked wheel wells. We climbed water towers, but never spray painted our names. We kept guns next to our heads, paraded on racks for display, but never thought to use them on one other. But one night, Thomas had a knife. He was sick of the constant torment of varsity blues, the blue blood attitude. "You hate me? You hate me? Then here, use this. Kill me now, motherfucker." But he didn't die that night. He was reborn. No one fucked with him anymore. And calling their bluff, he walked back to our car, slow and confident. And as we drove through the night, our electric veins, a pulse heard only by us, thumped and thumped as city lights became stars and flickered out of existence. Kind of continuing in the hell-raising, I guess. Sex was called Homecoming Game. Want to thank again J. Bruce Fuller of Yellow Flag Press. He made some limited edition broadsides for tonight. So if you do like this poem and just really want to support the arts, and especially Yellow Flag Press, they're in the back for sale. A wonderful limited edition broadside. So please visit the table in the back. We have some merch. Like a band. We got some merch back there. There's no mailing list, unfortunately.
Buy a t-shirt.
Buy a t-shirt. Let's say if you show us yours, we'll give you a t-shirt free, but we don't have any t-shirt.
Free poems.
Alright, this is called Homecoming Game. We hopped the fence while the game was still in the first quarter. And once inside, we snuck slugs of vodka from a flask engraved with smiley faces, X's for eyes. Climbing underneath the field bleachers, we clung to the skeletal support beams, the remains of a bombed-out factory. And I followed you and tugged at your second-hand flannel trailing around your waist. Feet stomped overhead and sent popcorn and candy wrapper shrapnel down. The final horn sounded. Your painted black nails pinched my waist and pulled me closer. As our lips met, those above ascended to their feet. Fathers gave up their sons and mothers cried for their return. Foam fingertips dragged the ground. I had no place to be except with you. As the bleachers emptied, we crawled out of the shadows and made our way to the top of the press box. Alone, we watched the dance of headlights caravan and lead the defeated home. This next one's, a few of you might have heard, this was read at Vision Verse last year. Can't multitask. Mile off the highway. We know which country stores sell us booze and leave illuminated under the cracked neon crown of RC Cola. We drink the collective whiskey like communion wine and smoke the last of our parents' cigarettes. We share our stash and plan midnight rendezvous to all-night diners. With folded menus, we sit lost in spirals of coffee cream hallucinations while flamingo pink waitresses and born-again truckers, both with amphetamine eyes, speak in non-stop whispers. We tell girlfriend fantasies of those we never talk with and what their lip gloss tastes like. A mix of peppermint and coconut and cherry, all blended together to tease. We talk shit of our town and conjure imaginary escapes in borrowed cars while we search for borrowed ideas that we read in borrowed books. But still, our lips tremble at big city names like New York, New York. And although we'd never admit, we gather together for protection. All of us, clad in Converse and flannel, a one-star army of dyed hair and chain wallets, because sometimes all we have are each other. All right, we're going to move now. I was in the military, stationed overseas, and that's what this poem's about. Just being away from those that you love, I guess, or that you think you love at the time, and still kind of, I guess, succumb to human desire or whatnot. Since JD was stationed at the same base that I was at, this will be for him tonight. This poem is called Furlough, May 1999. While my uniform sleeps on a chair back next to unpolished boots, I barrel deep through broken roads, race far away from RAF Mildenhall. My date, a local girl, laughs at my accent as I call out tongue-heavy signs of the English countryside. The same way tourists back home parse through Tishomingo and Kosciuszko. She asked me about America, then of New York, then of Hollywood. She asked me of the war. She asked me if I'm lost, and then still of other things that I know nothing about. America's not lost, I say, only losing. And she crosses her legs. My tongue continues to play its roadside games, and half an hour later we are in the club's parking lot. Inside there's dance and the drink of stout pints and endless rows of shots and shots until my voice slurs. And in this moment where strobe lights flicker and music is felt from the ground up, the heat from her skin radiates and twists with mine. This is when I forget war stars and unraveling stripes. But as the house lights come up and the heavy bass retreats, the DJ, he calls into the mic. Drenched in sweat and new sadness, I raise my hands and surrender to the night and scream, no more, no more.
What, doctor?
I know tomorrow my head will hang hung over in my hands. I know tomorrow I will write insincere letters to a lover back home. And I know now, miles away, fighters taxi down a runway with wings, heavy and armed. Just as quick as my memory thinks of those times in the military, we're going to pass on right through that. I thought that being from Mississippi Delta, most of you know I love blues, and I love old bars that still play the blues. Even being from the Delta, it's hard to find music. So it's an amalgamation so much now that it's not true blues or traditional sounding blues. But these next few poems really go into, I guess, me writing about a bar. This first one's called Funeral Song. The summer is suffocating, but the spilt drinks and grenadine glue my elbows to the bar. Littered shells crack under a stranger's feet. A woman with bloodshot eyes pours draughts. The steers drunk with the wooden taps, the spires of the captain's wheel. The music starts slow, like a funeral song rolling across an empty dance floor, mingling with the snuff smoke that tickles my nose. Ash stains the fingertips that wipes the sweat off my forehead. The guitar calls for prayer, and I order another drink. The singer's eyes close, and he lowers his head towards the microphone and sings, "I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away." But I alone, I cannot fly, only listen and drift further away, spotting ghosts at the bow. Does anybody know who Junior Kimbrough or R.L. Burnside is? If not, they're just some, they're past now, but contemporary bluesmen. They're more North Mississippi style blues, more of a drone than a 12-bar blues. But anyway, they're mentioned here. I got to go to Kimbrough's new place after the first one was burnt down, and this is kind of my experience. I was scared as hell in there. But this, the song or the poem is called "The Night's Filled with Shadows." Title's taken from the old traditional roll and tumble. Where the only color are mismatched slow blurs of holiday string lights and home-filled pints of corn whiskey stay attached to lips. The names Scratch and Legba remain carved in the splintered rafters of this farmhouse converted juke. Mosquitoes have little chance to land on the swell of bodies gnawing each other and themselves to the bone in front of the band. If sweat were blood, we'd all be dead. Next to the stage, candle wax drips from a makeshift altar onto guitar pick offerings, while flames twist around pictures of Kimbrough and Burnside, the last real sacrifice. Because of my sins, I am here, weaving through the shadows and stomping one-leg struts to the drone of blues, senses lost in rapture. But even in my fever disorientation, as heat lifts off my skin, I should be afraid. But I know shadows are only where light longs to be. And in this place, there is no need for light, only want. I'm going to do one more of the barroom poems before I get out of, you got to get out of the bar sometimes. And you go to a coffee shop and they start serving beer. This one's called Honky Tonk Angel. None of y'all by chance have been to Cleveland, Mississippi, have you? A couple, there's a few, well, we got a few hands. This is another one of those wily God in my ear places. Actually, my wife was the one that said, why are we here? She didn't say it so nicely, but yeah, so that's what this place. And they didn't play the blues though. This is a weird bar. It's kind of on the fringe. It's It's called Honky Tonk Angel. Before the fog descended, we gawked at roadsides littered with dead possums and dodged stray dogs that wailed decomposed moans. The neon-clad fat man stamped hands and took tabs. The lady bartender initially appeared attractive behind the laser greens and reds that crisscrossed an almost empty dance floor. An interracial lesbian cowgirl couple danced crotch to ass, and I watched then as the more manly led her woman to a shadowed corner. Next to a flashing men's sign, the camouflage house DJ carelessly tossed top 40 hits. A playlist of Phil Collins, then Merle Haggard, then Snoop Dogg made no sense. In the restroom, the urinal trough was once a pig smoker that once was a propane tank. It hung corroded against a bowed wooden ball. But back in the bar, 7 other doe-eyed patrons kicked back beers with talks of deer and desires while the sharks circled the pool table, throwing dollar bills to bait my pocket, my eyes, and my ego. And then I felt your signal to leave, a pinch on my inner wrist. And I looked at you, my Carolina queen, the one I brought to this God-forsaken place, and whispered into your ear, "You are my angel." And once outside, the fog suffocated the gray gates that glowed neon. We paid our toll and passed as ghosts back through the solitary streetlight, back across the train tracks and overgrown crossroads. With windows down, we worshipped in silence along the forgotten side streets of a hushing river. She still reminds me of that place, actually. It's called Shakers, if anybody ever's gone to Shakers. It's a scary, scary place. I have a few more. Kind of continuing. We're outside the bar, let's say, and we're still driving home. And you know when it's those moments of extreme, you're up all night, you're trying to drive home, whether or not you're drinking or whatnot, but just the moon plays with you. And that's what this poem's about. It's called 20 Miles Out. I have a little epigraph from Walt Whitman's song On the Open Road. It says, "From this hour, freedom. From this hour, I ordain myself, loosed of the limits and imaginary lines." So maybe think of that. Let's lose all the limits. 20 miles out. My symphonic dashboard hangs in the southwest corner, and the sweet film from a 50-cent honey bun coats the inside of my mouth. What's left of the moon illuminates her warning, and as the city nears, old neighborhoods begin. But it is in this moment, before the cold copper doorknob turns, that is wide awake, and as the light snakes through the pale coyote clouds. It's 2 a.m. and the violet sky undresses. I remember the highway's electric hum, and the branches of summer shadowing the road where centerline reflectors click under my tires to form broken sentences that translate to nothing. Night's uncalloused hand cups her revealed breast, and suicidal mosquitoes explode on the windshield. It's been denounced. I'm getting old. So I got 3 poems left, and these maybe are going to focus on coming home. I started out the poems kind of about Mississippi, and I thought that it should end it. When I came here, I was so stoked to come to the South to learn more about the craft of writing. And then when I got here, I learned that Louisiana local color and Mississippi local color were opposite ends of the spectrum, even though they're right next to each other. So it's been overwhelming, and it makes me miss home more, but at the same time, it makes me realize how every place is more and more unique. So it's been a great experience. I got out of the military. This poem is called "In the Salmon's Eyes," and the epigraph says September 15th, 2001. I got out of the military about 4 days after September 11th, and that's what this is kind of about. I was on one of the first flights overseas, or back to the States from Japan. I was stationed to here. It was just a weird feeling. I was so happy to be out, but then there was maybe a regret or guilt that I was getting out when all this was going on.
What branch?
Air Force. So that's what this is about. In Salmon's Eyes. As the 12 men danced on the banks of Puget Sound, their tan skin beaded, flickered with each spin and kick. Behind them, the nation's canoes filled with water created a floating bridge across the purple horizon. 24 hours ago, I was overseas, consumed by the Pacific, knee-deep in combat boots and camouflage, whaling-based sirens and flight lines filled with missiles and men. But this day, I'm blended with Seattle, drunk on dark ale and bliss. I wasn't worried about the following days or the TV and its images of horror, nor did I waste my energy on delayed flights that would eventually take me home. But it was this day that I had no real place. A turquoise-faced man lifts his hands as if to conduct the crowd. Chanting in pentatonics, he sang, "Welcome the new moon, welcome the salmon, farewell the sun." As the canoes paddled towards their moon, the crowds left. But before I trekked back across the port city, I watched a minivan roll into the pavilion. The decorated men boxed up their drums and rattles, then stripped their deer skin to reveal jeans and t-shirts. And I remember black feathers remained in their hair, and how the men, joyous of the day, they all embraced. But there is nothing like coming home, right? So these last two poems are, I remember cotton growing up. Jay always talks about my cotton poems, because I think to a new audience, or to younger generation, they're not going to even know what cotton is in the South, or how important cotton was to the South. They're just going to know corn and maybe soybeans or not, but I used to see this, it was like heaven. It really was. It was just white, and it wasn't too tall. So how beautiful it was, but you could see everything. Now the corn is everywhere. I'm not dissing on corn, but now the corn is everywhere. Though it grows so tall, you feel it's claustrophobic. I mean, if you're doing a cornfield, you can't see around you. So it is. It's different. It's a lot different. And so this next poem is about kind of me missing cotton. It's called End of Season. The cotton fields waltz with the wind as if an AM radio stirs from beneath the soil. The sun begins to set and farmers' chatter clutters the airwaves. Doves leave their power lines to roost. And into the night combines kick dust high enough to hide the moon. Morning reveals the ewes' naked rows as trucks hook up their trailers and pull out. And along the highway, loose cotton spills from its cages and waits by the edges for next year's dance. Has anybody ever seen a combine at night? It really does hide the moon. It's so crazy to think that the economics of farming, they have to do this all during the night, And that was just always stuck in my head. Next to my house, there was a field that happened. This last one, continuing on the harvest, it's called Harvest on the Mississippi. And again, I want to thank y'all all for listening. And we got another great poet that's coming up. So again, Harvest on the Mississippi. In the near standstill traffic, I think of wild children, bruised and dirty, fishing in rice field runoffs, while miles away their fathers click and call, crackling orders over CBs to work truck blacks who drink Dixie cups of spiked coffee and race through fields of soybeans pulling loaded hoppers. The man in the tractor waves me past into a newly yellowed land. His black hand, large and lively, pulls at the air. And I edge around the spiral blades and pass back in my lane. And ahead tugboats, resting heavy in the burnt water, methodically churn the river. And from this distance the frothy wake appears heavenly, like cotton that once burst from ripened bowls, where in youth's savage memory its white, dense wetness streams from finger to finger in great delight. Thank y'all so much. Let's get the next man of the hour, Mr. J. Bruce Fuller. Y'all please give him a very warm welcome, and thank y'all again so much.